Nobody expected the Raiders to become a possible landing spot for a Bengals defensive tackle this quickly. But now, a trade proposal has put Las Vegas in the conversation, and the price could be shockingly low. So here's the big question. Could one small trade help fix a Raiders defense that just exposed a major weakness? A proposal from Chris Landers of Fansided has suggested that Las Vegas could send Cincinnati a 2027 sixth-round pick for defensive tackle Chris Jenkins. On the surface, that sounds like a minor move. But look deeper, and this could actually be a smart gamble for the Raiders. Jenkins entered the NFL with plenty of expectations after Cincinnati selected him in the second round of the 2024 draft. He is still young, still developing, and hasn't yet become the dominant starter the Bengals hoped he would be. During the 2025 season, Jenkins played 498 defensive snaps and received a 53.3 PFF defensive grade. Those numbers aren't spectacular, but they don't tell the entire story. Jenkins still showed that he can create pressure in the middle of the defensive line. He finished with 18 total pressures, including 15 hurries, 2 sacks, and 1 quarterback hit. He also recorded 23 solo tackles against the run. That's important for Las Vegas because the Raiders don't necessarily need a superstar at defensive tackle. They need another capable body who can compete, create pressure, and give the defense more options. And Cincinnati may have a reason to listen. The Bengals have added major talent to the interior of their defensive line this offseason, including Dexter Lawrence and Jonathan Allen. B.J. Hill is also making progress in his recovery from injury, while T.J. Slatton has reportedly been performing well during practice. Suddenly, Cincinnati could have more defensive tackles than it needs. And when a team has a crowded position group, someone can become expendable. That could be Jenkins. For the Raiders, the potential price is what makes this proposal so interesting. A 2027 sixth-round pick is not a huge investment. If Jenkins develops into the player Cincinnati once expected him to become, Las Vegas could end up getting serious value from a very small move. And if he doesn't, the Raiders haven't sacrificed much. But here's where the story takes a major turn. The defensive line isn't the only position creating questions in Las Vegas. The biggest decision on the entire roster may be happening at quarterback. Kirk Cousins versus Fernando Mendoza. And after the Raiders' preseason opener against Arizona, this battle suddenly became even more fascinating. Cousins came into the game as the clear veteran favorite, and he immediately showed why. He played one drive and completed 5 of 6 passes for 50 yards. The highlight came when he connected with Michael Mayer for a touchdown. It was short. It was efficient. And it looked exactly like the kind of performance you would expect from an experienced NFL quarterback. But then Fernando Mendoza got his opportunity. The first overall pick in the 2026 draft completed 10 of 16 passes for 97 yards and a touchdown. The Raiders ultimately lost the game 27-4, so there wasn't much to celebrate from a team perspective. Still, Mendoza gave the coaching staff something to work with. There were flashes. There was confidence. And most importantly, there was progress. Head coach Clint Kubiak described the rookie as a player who is continuing to develop. But Mendoza wasn't satisfied. Instead of celebrating his touchdown or focusing on his statistics, he immediately pointed out areas where he needed to get better. He talked about improving his timing and anticipation. That response may have impressed the coaching staff just as much as anything he did on the field. Because young quarterbacks don't become great simply by throwing touchdowns. They have to learn from mistakes. And Mendoza appears determined to do exactly that. But then Kirk Cousins delivered a message that could tell us a lot about this quarterback room. Cousins said he doesn't want to overload Mendoza with advice. His view is simple. Mendoza is intelligent. He's mature. He already has a strong feel for the game. So rather than constantly talking to him, Cousins prefers to watch, wait for the right moment, and offer a quick suggestion when it can actually help. That sounds like a small detail. It isn't. Cousins knows exactly what kind of situation he's in. He is the veteran quarterback who wants to win now. Mendoza is the rookie quarterback the organization hopes can lead the team for years. And Cousins has already made it clear that the Raiders should play whichever quarterback gives them the best chance to win, even if that means he isn't the one on the field. For now, Cousins still has the advantage. But Mendoza may be getting a bigger opportunity very soon. The coaching staff has indicated that the rookie could receive more first-team representatives during practice. And that is where this competition could really change. Because Mendoza doesn't necessarily have to destroy Cousins' lead overnight. He just needs to keep improving. If he becomes more accurate, gets the ball out faster, improves his anticipation, and continues showing confidence, the coaching staff may eventually have a difficult decision on its hands. And the schedule makes that decision even more important. The Raiders have a brutal stretch early in the season, including Kansas City in Week 4, New England in Week 5, Buffalo in Week 6, and the Los Angeles Rams in Week 7. That's not exactly a friendly environment for a rookie quarterback. So starting Mendoza immediately could be a major gamble. But if he continues developing faster than expected, keeping him on the sideline could become just as difficult. And while the quarterback competition is exciting, the Raiders have another problem that might be even more urgent. Their secondary. The preseason loss to Arizona exposed it badly. Arizona's quarterbacks, Jacoby Brissett and Gardner Minshew, combined for an extremely efficient passing performance, with the Cardinals starting the game 16 for 16 through the air. That's preseason. We need to remember that. But it is still something the Raiders cannot simply ignore. Several young defensive backs had difficult moments. Jermod McCoy, a fourth-round pick in the 2026 draft, struggled at times while continuing to find his rhythm after a physically challenging period. Hezekiah Massey also had some positive moments, but Arizona's receivers created problems for him. Trevon Stokes showed flashes. Isaiah Polamau and Jeremy Chin also had moments where the defense wasn't exactly sharp. Then there was Taron Johnson's penalty. The receiver had beaten him, and Johnson was forced to commit the foul to prevent a potentially bigger play. Darian Porter also had trouble in coverage. And this wasn't only a problem with the starters. Once the backups entered the game, Michael Wilson and Reggie Virgil continued finding room downfield. That is what makes this situation concerning. If only one cornerback was struggling, you could call it an individual problem. But when multiple defensive backs are giving up separation, it starts looking like a bigger team issue. So let me ask you this. Who's more responsible for the Raiders' defensive problems right now? The young defensive backs, the coaching staff, or the lack of experience? Drop one name in the comments. I want to see who Raiders fans blame for what happened against Arizona. Because there is one important thing we cannot forget. This was only the first preseason game. These players are young. They're learning the system. They're adjusting to NFL speed. And they're still fighting for roster spots. So this is not the time to declare the secondary a disaster. But it is absolutely the time to pay attention. The Raiders cannot enter the regular season assuming this group is already fixed. They need protection around these young players. And that's where a player like Chris Jenkins could become interesting. A defensive tackle who can create pressure inside can make life harder for opposing quarterbacks. If the defensive line gets into the backfield faster, quarterbacks have less time to sit in the pocket and attack an inexperienced secondary. That doesn't magically solve the Raiders' coverage problems, but it could reduce the pressure on them. And that's the bigger picture emerging from this preseason opener. The Raiders have some exciting pieces. They have a fascinating quarterback competition. They have young defensive talent. And they have a possible low-cost trade target in Chris Jenkins. But they also have real questions. The secondary needs improvement. The defensive line could use more depth. And the coaching staff has to figure out exactly how quickly Fernando Mendoza should be pushed toward the starting lineup. The good news. There is still time. That's the entire purpose of the preseason. Las Vegas has an opportunity to identify the problems now instead of discovering them when the games start counting. But the first warning has already arrived. The Raiders cannot afford to ignore what Arizona exposed. And they also cannot rush Mendoza simply because fans are excited to see the rookie take over. The smart move is to keep evaluating everything. If Jenkins becomes available for a sixth-round pick, the Raiders should at least explore it. If Mendoza keeps improving, give him more first-team opportunities. And if the secondary continues giving up easy completions, the front office may need to make another move before Week 1. So now it's your turn. What should the Raiders prioritize? Should Las Vegas trade for Chris Jenkins and strengthen the defensive line? Should the team start preparing Fernando Mendoza to take over sooner rather than later? Or is the secondary the biggest problem that needs to be fixed immediately? Drop your answer below. Because one thing is already clear, the Raiders have talent, but they also have questions, and the next few preseason games could reveal which of those questions becomes a real problem. Stay locked in, because this Raiders roster is far from finished.